everybody. This is Meg Gemelli at The Making of a Marriage. I am popping in today. As you know, we like to take the awkward out of honest conversations for couples. And today I want to talk to you about a topic that is not only awkward, but it's also a little sensitive. Now you know that this is my primary job. I'm a marriage and family therapist. So in no way, shape, or form is this meant to be any sort of personalized advice. But what I do use my background for and my experience is to teach people about some common things that couples come up against and kind of help folks to understand what's healthy and what's maybe not so healthy. And one of the more unfortunate parts of my job is that I often help couples. Well, I don't want to say often. We try not to, but sometimes I am put in the position to help couples develop separation agreements. It's one of the more sobering aspects of my profession. I don't think any counselor loves to do it, but sometimes it's very necessary. And one of the things that I come up with quite often is that, especially couples of faith, believe that somehow they're letting down God or letting down their church, or they've received the message somehow that because they're separating, they're disappointing God, that their salvation is in jeopardy, that they are not being good husbands and wives, and that they're breaking the covenant that they made by getting married. So I wanted to dispel some of the myths attached to that type of thinking, especially when it comes to issues of intimate partner violence, domestic violence. And some of the behaviors that are really, really concerning that I've had a lot of women in the therapy room tell me, I actually worked up the courage to tell somebody what was happening to me behind closed doors, and they said it was because I was not submitting, or that I wasn't honoring my husband. And maybe you've heard some of these comments before. Maybe you've received that message for yourself. And if that's the truth, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that that message has become so distorted. And that some of these scriptures have been taken so out of context. The only reason I'm even talking about this issue of faith is because I do some Christian counseling. I understand that not everybody here ascribes to any one faith, but one of the commonalities across many different faiths is that to uphold marriage is a pretty big deal. So I come to you from that place, and also an understanding of the Christian faith. So one of the scriptures that I come up against a lot is from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10, and you've probably heard it before. It's, "To the married I give this charge, not I, but the Lord," because Paul, a man named Paul is speaking. He wrote this letter to the church in Corinth, and it says, "The wife should not separate from her husband." And there are a bunch of other scriptures that are kind of pulled from the Bible on this topic, and so much so that in some places, men and women are excommunicated for separating or divorcing. Their families are kind of booted. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of secret stuff happening behind closed doors because folks haven't found a place to be honest about the struggles that they're going through. And so I want to have a totally honest take today and answer any of your questions that you may have, and also talk a little bit about the truth, which is that marriage is a covenant promise. So covenant means promise. It means agreement. It's like a contract. And so we enter into contracts all the time at work. We enter into the contract of marriage. We say, you know what, till death do us part, we're going to go through hard things and good things and beautiful things, but I promise to be faithful to you. That's the promise we make in marriage. And likewise, you can see evidence of God giving his people contracts, a covenant promise. He says, you'll be my people, I'll be your God, you obey, I will bless, and that's how it works. We go back and forth. We listen to God, we receive blessings. That's what people of the Christian faith believe. So, what we don't hear preached is what happens when the worst is happening, for better or for worse. The worst is happening, but it's not the two of us coming up against the worst in the world. It's that the worst is actually being perpetrated by the person we signed the contract with. What then? And so too few times do we hear about the boundaries that God actually puts up. Mostly we hear forgiveness, 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 forgiveness preached. Yes, absolutely. He says we forgive so that we're forgiven, right? We've been forgiven, so therefore we forgive. but fewer times is it explained to us that the people of God just can't behave however they want, abusively and disobediently and ugly, and still continue to expect God to bless us. Marriage is a blessing. It is not only a promise, it's this promise of faithfulness that this person who agreed to support, love, lay down their lives for us, to honor us, that they're the blessing in our lives that help make us stronger. So, all that to say is that we don't get to behave however we want and still receive God's blessing. So, why would we expect, if we're on the victim side of things, the survivor side of things, or the perpetrator side of things, why should we expect to treat somebody in a way that is undignified, degrading, abusive, but still expect that blessing to continue, to have that person near to us? It doesn't make any sense. So when I work with a couple and they're talking about separation, oftentimes it is with the ultimate goal of reconciliation. It's simply the fact that they can't be in the same place at the same time and stay safe, that we actually have to create a separation agreement. What is a separation agreement? It sounds really scary, but all this is rules of engagement. It's like the promise from the beginning, for better or for worse, till death do us part, and richer or poorer. Think of all the promises you made when you got married. That's what a separation agreement is. I agree right now that I can't trust myself to stay safe. So therefore, I'm going to behave within these rules of engagement so that I can honor you and still respect you and keep us safe while we work on this marriage. But that takes two people. And see, the thing about marriage is that, yes, we're united in one flesh, but we're still two separate souls, and we're still both responsible to stay true to God, to follow His call and His will. That's what faith believing people ascribe to. That's what we signed up for. So boundaries get really murky, and oftentimes in marriage, we start to endure behaviors that we would have been out the door. Say somebody on your third date put their hands on you. There's no way you're going to go back for that fourth date, right? But all of a sudden we get married and we start to think, well, this is what I signed up for. I must deserve it. You know, I hear comments like that sometimes, or I can't leave. If I do that, I'll be disobedient, or you know, all the things that are used to shame people going through really hard things. So if you've experienced this, I am sorry. Please know that in my experience, that is not an appropriate application of Scripture into the institution of marriage. God would never elevate a representation of Jesus's relationship with the church. That's what marriage is. He would never elevate a relational institution over somebody's personal salvation and well-being and life-giving call, the call that's put on their lives. So please know that if you're experiencing verbal, psychological, physical abuse, if you are so confused that in one moment your partner is saying beautiful things to you and in the next they're saying terribly horrible and violent things to you, and that confusion and that overwhelm and that shame just rests on you day after day, that's not okay. In that case, separation is a very responsible situation to consider. So I will post some more resources underneath this video, and I hope this helped just to take a little confusion away about the application of scriptures in the faith community. So I thank you for being here with me, and next time it'll hopefully be a more upbeat topic, but once again, we take the awkward out of honest. I'll talk to you later.